Um, this program is being recorded. However, at the end of the program, I will turn off the recording in case there are any questions that you want to ask that you don't want to be on the recording. This recording will be distributed to all the registrants later this week. I'm off tomorrow, so it'll be later this week. And so without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Jack Defy of Museum Scan.
All right, thank you so much. And so before we get started today, if everyone doesn't mind, you're just dropping your name, where you're coming from in the chat. Like to see where everyone's from, where everyone's visiting from today. Um, my name is Jack Defy. I'm the founder of Museum Scan, and we're a 3D scanning studio based out of Waltham, Massachusetts. And we do 3D scanning for libraries, museums, and cultural institutions all around the Northeast and beyond. Um, as Susan mentioned, this presentation will be recorded, and we'll distribute that to everyone afterwards, as well as the slides will be available at the end. If we have any questions, there'll be a brief break in the middle for questions, and then for the most part, we'll handle those at the end. And you'll also receive all of the links and resources that I talked about during the chat during the talk um, with that email. So thank you again for coming. So the first question that we get asked a lot is, what is a 3D scan? Now, a 3D scan is not just an image or a video, but it's a complete three-dimensional object that you can view from any angle. And so it allows visitors to engage interactively with the artifacts in a digital format. You can zoom in, move it around, and see details that you couldn't see in person. So it's more than just a copy, but it actually enables new ways to interact and to understand the artifact. The 3D model is fundamentally a file, just like a PDF is a file. You can embed it in your website, you can print it, measure it, or archive it. And as one client said, the scans have incredible detail, capturing every fold of my clothes and even my shoelaces. And so you can expect very high resolution, both in the geometry of the scan, as well as the texture and the color that we're able to see. And this image is here is me taking photographs of the Curtis motorcycle with the 3D scan you can see here. In order to take a 3D scan, we primarily use two different tools. We use photogrammetry, which is a camera-based approach. This captures really high surface detail, the color, the feeling of the object. We also use laser scanning. Laser scanning is more for engineering applications or replica creation, where the very precise geometry is very important. Both of these techniques are completely non-contact, and so they're safe for museum artifacts and can be used for a wide range of shapes and sizes and different types of artifacts. The way photogrammetry works is by taking many overlapping photographs from different angles, kind of like how our two eyes can sense depth in a space. We're able to compare the positions of details in the photographs from two different angles, and we can use this to estimate the depth of that portion of the artifact. Then multiply this by tens or hundreds or sometimes even thousands of photographs, and you can create a complete 3D model of the entire artifact. Um, the best part about this is that any artifact that you can take photographs of is also safe to scan, and so it's really easy to understand what artifact might be too fragile, what is safe. It's completely non-contact, and so we're simply taking photographs all around the object. Laser scanning is similar, but instead of estimating the depth from two different photographs, we directly measure it by triangulating the laser light as it passes over the artifact. This creates a point cloud, a cloud of all these different individual measurements. And again, the laser scanning is used more for geometry applications. The photographs capture the color and the surface detail very well, which is why it's our primary method. But the laser scanning can sometimes capture details on reflective or translucent portions of the artifact that can otherwise be very difficult to scan. The process of creating the 3D model after this is then we go from the point cloud, the data of all these individual points collected either from the photographs or from the laser scanner, and then we mesh on top of this. This creates the geometry of the underlying model. And so you can see here, this is a mesh like you would see 3D printed. So at this stage, even before the texture, the model can be 3D printed. It can be, this is what we use to create a replica of the model, of the artifact. And then finally, we layer on the photographic surface data on top of this. And so this would be considered a textured 3D model. And these have different file formats. Something like this would be an STL file. If you're familiar with 3D printing, this is the common format that 3D printed files are in. And then the textured model will have formats like OBJ or GLB. And this is where we store both the underlying geometry as well as the texture. And many people are using this technology. And so, for example, the Smithsonian has a huge 3D scanning initiative going on right now. They've just recently scanned over 4,000 models, and these are all available for free for educational use, to download, print, and use. And the main reason that they cite for this work is that they have a tremendous number of artifacts in their collection, and unfortunately, only about 1% of that collection is on display at any given time. And so, if they have all these artifacts in storage, but they have 3D scans available on the internet, then suddenly the entire, much more of the collection, a larger percentage of their collection, can be available for education and research, and expanding access to all these things. Many university museums, for example, the Binghamton University, recently printed a tactile copy of one of the sculptures in their collection, and the Binghamton Art Museum. And they did this in partnership with the Makerspace and students, and they 3D printed this tactile copy using a 3D scan. This allowed visitors to interact with the art in a new way. So many visitors were able to touch the sculpture and experience it in a new way. But it also allowed for visitors who have never seen the artifact before to experience it for the very first time. Additionally, this type of technology is not limited to very large institutions. Even small museums, you don't have to scan 4,000 artifacts in order to have an impact. But simply one or two signature objects, scanned well, can power a web exhibit, a classroom kit, or tactile replicas that can expand access to the to the history. And on that note, one scan can power many different experiences. And so if we take a single scan, this can power a web experience, something interactive, augmented reality and virtual tours, video renders, which we'll talk a bit more in a minute, 3D prints and tactile replicas. And this, for example, this replica here was actually cast in bronze. And so it's not limited just to plastic and 3D printing. But in this case, we're able to make a complete replica out of cast bronze, mimicking the original, so that visitors can feel the weight of the medallion in their hands. And this provides more context than just seeing it behind a display case. We're also able to use these 3D printed elements as for tactile access and education. And so people who can't experience the museum through sight can now suddenly feel the artifacts on their own and experience them, experience that journey in their own way. And it also provides more interactivity to every visitor. And finally, it's not just visitor facing, but the 3D scans also provide a permanent archive for conservation work. Many artifacts will degrade over time, especially if they're historical sites are exposed to the elements. Lots of things can happen, and so having a permanent record of the current state of the artifact as it is right now, a digital record, can also help aid in conservation efforts and restoration processes. So this is the first artifact that we scanned at Museum Scan. This was a mummified sacred ibis from the Cornell collection, and we scanned it without ever touching it. At the time, the mummy was in a rather fragile state, and so it was very important to capture it in a way that we could then put it on display and exhibit, but without damaging the fragile surface. The model that we created was then featured in a multisensory exhibit, and the work was covered by CNN, the Smithsonian, Nature, and Archaeology magazine. So there's a lot of interest in this type of work. In the same way, the scan is also insurance. A couple of years ago, from the Notre Dame fire, they actually used an academic laser scan that had been taken of the cathedral as a key reference in the restoration process. The same logic can be used to protect whether it's a priceless artifact or an outdoor historic site that may change with time. And so there are many use cases to this type of technology. The first, as we mentioned, was these web applications. And so this here is an example from the Curtis Museum. They've already started using the motorcycle scans in these interactive educational displays. And so this allows more people to access the artifacts, whether it's online or around the world. But it also provides a new way for people to interact with the artifacts, because you can see not just the artifact itself, but also how it moved and the function. And these pair well with a guided story, a narration, and even translations to other languages. The other aspect of this is these animations. And so we're able to, using the 3D model, we're able to move the artifact in like it would have moved originally. Even if the current one on display is, might not be able to fly right now, the model sure can. And so we're able to demonstrate the takeoff procedure, the way that the flaps move and the plane responds to the air, even the intricate movements of the engine that normally would be maybe wouldn't be clear from looking at it originally. Now we can see the fine movements and give more context to the artifact that's standing in front of someone. And finally, again, the accessibility angle. There's a lot of work that can be done with tactile elements within museums, within libraries, and within communities. A lot of these artifacts and even local history is not accessible besides through sight. And so we're able to create both the 3D models. This can be used to 3D print tactile displays. This is also one of our products is a tactile relief panel of a 2D artwork. And so this here is Van Gogh's Starry Night, and it allowed museum visitors to feel the swirls in the sky and the moon and the town and experience it sometimes for the first time. So there are really 3 levels to 3D scanning, and we actually went through this very same journey ourselves. At first you don't need any fancy equipment really. There are plenty of free applications, and the technology is getting better every day. And so even with just an iPhone, you can create these 3D scans that will enable a lot of these these engagements with the community, with visitors, and take that first step to bringing these things online or tactile to reach more people. After that, a lot of libraries and university makerspaces are taking a more DIY approach. You don't have to get a professional crew to do everything and make these large experiences. Even engaging the community and engaging real people with the local history, in-house 3D scanning can be very effective. Whether this is purchasing a 3D scanner that many people can use, or just having the software available in the training to use an iPhone camera to take these 3D scans, and the software support for that. A DIY solution can be in some ways even more impactful. But then on the upper end, this is what we specialize in. This is professional 3D scanning, and so this is where you'll get super high detail capture, and we can start to think about like larger virtual projects or tactile accessibility displays. This is our process for a 3D scanning project. It's quite simple, but this would also mirror the process that you would doing it yourself. First, it starts with on-site capture. We don't require people to send us the artifacts. We go in person. This usually involves the photographs or sometimes the laser scanning. Your staff handles the handling of the artifact, and then we keep it entirely non-contact. One of the best things about 3D scanning is that you don't have to risk the original artifact to then get these create these interactive elements and things that can often take the burden off of the original artifact and reduce material handling over time. Then we process the photos or the scan, clean it up, and prepare it for whichever application that we're using it for, whether this is 3D printing or web displays or videos. And finally, we deliver the finished product, whether this is the 3D scan ready for a web display or a full build out. Everything is optimized for the use case that you're looking for. And one of the best things about this work is that the accessibility or the education angle is lends itself very well to grant funding. And so for a lot of smaller institutions, this is a great way to engage with this kind of work. You grant fund it once, and then the 3D models and the experiences and interactivity, it all lives on in your institution forever. And so I wanted to end with a brief note about just some ideas about what a local community 3D scanning can look like. And so whether this is capturing local history, with people within your community, capturing that history and putting it online so it's more accessible, making it tactile so more people can experience it, or volunteers 3D printing things to as a package to go to schools and classrooms and with partnerships with museums and libraries. There's a lot of these things don't require an entire large institution or professional build out, but we've already seen a lot of examples of this work coming from the free or DIY level that can really have a big impact in the community. And really, this all starts with one object that matters. So whether this is a historic site, a monument, or a priceless artifact, it just starts with one object. You 3D scan that, and one scan can lead to all these other things. So thank you guys so much for your time. The slides are available at this QR code. I will also drop the link in the chat, and that'll be available afterwards as well. The slides also include several other resources, like a complete vendor checklist and our tool list for entry-level 3D scanning. And at this point, I think we'll take any questions. And as always, feel free to reach out at info@museumscan.com. Thank you.
And thank you. Thank you very much, Jack. You can put questions in the chat, or you can just unmute yourself and ask. Let's see, we have a question here.
Nice.
What is the story behind your logo?
Yes, yeah, that's a great question. So, our logo is the sacred ibis. It's actually the first object that we scanned, and so the mummified sacred ibis was really like that project was really the reason that I started this company. And so that's always been a meaningful scan to us, and we decided to make that our logo. Very coincidentally, the sacred ibis also represents the Egyptian god Thoth, the god of knowledge and preservation. And so it worked out very well. But that's been our logo since the beginning.
Thank you. When we were at the Museum Association of New York, you had, and I know this isn't your main part of your business, but you had a model of, I think it was something on top of the Blue Hills, if I'm
Yes.
remembering correctly. So you can also do models of sites, or I'm thinking, well, you could put that in like a little visitor center for your town or something like that. So I don't know if you just want to mention a little bit about that, about.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so in addition to individual artifacts, the photogrammetry methodology is very, very flexible. And so just like it works with an iPhone camera or a professional camera, we're also able to use a drone camera to scan entire historic sites. And so this could be something like a statue or as large as entire buildings. So this gives us a lot of flexibility in the things that we can scan and the history that we can capture.
Okay, the next question is, does Museum Scan create the AR or broken down parts web feature motorcycle example? And
Yes, we do.
I might be butchering that, Leah, but
Not a problem. Yes, so that's one example of our educational tech packs. The idea is to leverage the 3D scans to create interactive educational experiences, whether this is for in situ at the museum or to send to classrooms. We create all types of experiences like that.
okay, do you do the printing as well? How large an artifact could be produced?
Yeah, we absolutely do. So we focus less on like hobby level 3D printing, which you might use for like a tactile classroom experience. Most of this can be done by a local makerspace or something. What we primarily focus on is museum quality replicas, leveraging the 3D scans. And so this would be complete 3D printed replicas, finished to mimic the original surface quality of the scan, or things like the cast bronze replica and other materials like that. To answer your second question, we can go pretty large. We can absolutely do multiple pieces built together into a larger model. And we haven't done any large like full scale statues or anything like that yet, but it's well within our wheelhouse. Awesome. Yeah, to answer this next question, um, sorry, I guess it's not a question, but thank you for the shout out. Yes, we do drone scanning of large buildings, and a barn is a great use case for that.
Any other questions? Again, if you want to unmute yourself or just type in the chat. Otherwise, I will do as I said and turn off the recording in case people had questions they did not want in the recording.
I unmuted myself and you can record me or not record me. This is Lee Foster.
Hi,
um,
Lee.
so I just want to reiterate that this huge barn is called the Hilton Barn. It's in the town of New Scotland. And we had a group of timber framers come back in the 80s and they couldn't figure out how this person made it in 1898. So I'm very keen on documenting how the pegs go in and what direction they go in to try to like create a educational platform to educate people how this man and 160 people erected a barn in 3 days. So there, that's my thing.
Yeah,
I'll contact you.
thank you. That sounds like a great use case. It's not just the structure itself that's historic, but there's a story there that you want to tell. That's yeah, that sounds perfect.
Okay, and I put a question in there for you, Lee. Um, I think New Scotland Spirits is involved with this barn. Is that correct?
Negative.
Negative. Oh, they're just advertising it. Okay, well, I will stop the recording now.